to, right? So obviously this edge, right, I'm going to draw a line and trace on top of that wall. So obviously I need first a wall layer for my walls. And then on my walls, I'm going to make sure their grouping's a little different. And I'm just going to, I know it's a straight line, so I'm going to keep it simple for myself and start with my line. And again, I'm just trying to find where the edge meets, and I'm going to hold down shift. So when I hold down shift, it constrains it to 90 degrees for me. And I'm going to drag that down and find where it hits the ground, which I've lost it there, but that's okay because it's dynamic anyway, right? So I can always edit that. And I would make that line particularly thicker than some other lines. Line segment tool, direct selection there. And then my anchor point, again, being aware. So this is when it becomes tricky. Sometimes the computer likes to, at least today it's been liking that I can draw this. So you got to click and then click again to get it to actually move those line tools. So I would obviously make that line a little thicker, and then this other corner, right, is going to be thinner because it's deeper in space, right? I can either copy or I can draw a new line. Holding down shift to draw straight lines. Right. And then A for direct select. Clicking once to enter into the line, clicking twice to then drag that line down. Now you'll see that, it's behind in space. Well, that's okay for now, but you know, you want to kind of pay attention to where that line is ending up. And then to change its value, right, I can't do it. I'm selecting points with the white select, and then I'm selecting the line itself with the black select there, and that's then taking down in a line weight. So now there is no absolute finite answer to what line weight should be. Now in construction documents and hand drafting, yes, use B for your grade lines, or use, you know, H2 or 2H for your lighter lines, right? There is that defined criterion that you can do. But that's only because we've been hand drafting for like thousands of years, right? So in the computer, there's not this scope, and it's because it's relational, right? I might have this wall. So yeah, so that's something I want you to make an attempt on, right? And you won't know, right, until you print it. Okay. Yeah. So then the next thing is making the window, right? So we've done line weights, we've done this. I make that my active layer. To make the window, I can easily just do the pen tool or the line tool. What's nice about doing, when I know I'm going to be making a rectangle in perspective, the pen tool, because it automatically begins collecting and filling. So I'll define my fill color first, which is possibly that color. And then it also makes it filled down here. And then I just start drawing clicking my points where I want my window. Easy. Now, if I want to, there's always a case where you want to say, well, I want to take that, and I spent a lot of time making that straight. And I want to take that and give that an even thickness, right? So the window trim is always the same thickness, right? And then I can just fine tune it for the perspective. So what have we ever heard? Who hasn't heard the term offsetting something? So can somebody define what offsetting something is? Right thing to use. Other times it's not the right thing to use. In this case, I just want to show you how to use it first, and then you can determine. Because what happens is it's going to offset both sides. When we get to AutoCAD, you can tell AutoCAD to do one side or the other side, right? Where this is just going to do both and call it a day. So I can say that here's my distance that I want to offset this object. And how do I want the joins to happen at the corners? Because what happens is, let's do it really, really big. So let's start with a rounded one and say I want to offset 1 inch, and always check the preview box there. So you'll see what happens, right? Is it took that line and it offset it. Actually, this is nice, right? If I want to bevel it, I can bevel it. All right, so in AutoCAD, this is filleting. And then I can also then miter that edge. So mitering it's going to make it so I zoom in far enough on this here. well, we'll soon zoom in a minute. I know that that's not what I want, and miter is typically where you want to be. Miter is the only way to get the clean square edges again. But each one is a quick operation for you. See, so I think it's 0.125 inches is my offset, and I click OK. Now, you'll see now all of a sudden, well, actually it's not far enough, so undo it. Do it one more time. Object, path, offset path, right? So it's double that. So it's 0.25 inches in my drawing. Hey, there we go. Close enough, right? Now, what can somebody say about it in relation to the edges of the wall? Would I go thicker or thinner with this, with those lines? Obviously, I mean, I think they're already too thick. I'm going to take that down to like probably like a 14 value. Right? Now it makes my windows look too pronounced. So you see how you're always going to be making these moves of changing values. Okay. So I want my trim, my window to recede. So the hole in the wall is always going to be the thicker line weight, and then the window recedes back. So how I do receding is make it thinner line weight, right? So it's that attention to detail is what ultimately makes a better drawing later on. Okay? Slowly going down. And actually, probably want to make that one. And again, clean. Remember, we've all printed now, and we've got to this point where it's just like too much. That's better right there. Okay, so that's like the coloring and everything else. Now to finalize that background, right? So I need to change the color of this object, right? So that's a tricky part here. All I need to do, now that it's a dynamic object, is I can begin then fluctuating it any color I want. Now, if I was just going to color in Illustrator and call it, then that's fine again, but we're going to Photoshop, so when I know I'm going to Photoshop with my Illustrator file, I'm less concerned with the color at that point. I'm more concerned with getting just a container for color variation. But I still will try to be as close as I can be. Okay. The other part of this, right, so that's drawing that. The next one that you'll encounter that's really, really tricky in here is this idea of the stair, right? So let's go to the stairs. I'm going to make that layer active. Now, how I would approach the stair, right, is you kind of got this penciled out. Somebody came in and they drew it. And they drew their construction line from the point, right? And then they struck down where the stair was from the plan. So it's kind of laid out your operation you'd take in Illustrator too. Now I could easily come with the pen tool, right? Click, 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 click. But the importance of stairs, right, is that they need to look regular. Every stair is the same. If you miss the point, your eyes, because you have that repetition, your eye's gonna miss. As soon as you miss a point, your eye's gonna immediately see that error in the other ones of repetition. So how I mitigate that change is to draw my line first based on my construction line there. Right. Okay, and then I'm gonna add points, division points to this line. Now there's nothing, I don't believe that there's a divide on my path tool. It doesn't do what I thought. Anyway, to add it, it's under the pen tool, and I can add points and I can delete points. So I can add now points to divide out this line. And I want to be as close as I can with this. So this is something when I have repetitive objects in space. I mean, again, when you miss the repetition of it, it begins to look like it was not drawn very well. And I'm going to skip this part because it's just not there. You'll have to kind of use that on your own. Now the next thing I need is when I go to move these lines, right, and I select my path and then click again, when I move that, oops. So I need to also create points for where I want to drag that to. So here is dividing out one stair, then I need to add more points in the middle. And then these become fairly arbitrary, right, because I'm going to be moving those into space. Take my wall, and then I would just continue. So I'm always looking at where my lines of color are going to be, and I would finish that stair as well. and that, and that. Right, so I look at edging there. And again, line weights are very, very applicable in this.